I did a talk to on our social channels about the arrival of swallows and the resilience of nature. Where you go to at a time like this when it's shit and it's like nothing I've experienced before. And I always talked about resilience of nature and how the swallows, they come every summer, and we always did this in my family. My mum and sister used to race to see who's the first swallow, and it was like that was summer, and it's a really symbolic thing because it's a little bird that's like 4 inches long, travels. I think it's like 200 miles a day for 40 days from South Africa to come and spend its time over here, and then they're just gone at the end of summer, and then suddenly they're back again. And it's like the fact that bird has made that journey back there and back in that period of time is something really sort of positive about it and resilient.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with me, Dan Burgess. The concept of the Spaceship Earth is simple. We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. Like a spaceship, we have a finite amount of supplies with an intelligent operating system, which keeps everything we need replenished as long as we all respect it and use wisely. So an understanding of how this system works, along with deep cooperation between humans and all life, is essential to keep us thriving and the spaceship flying. In this podcast, I'm in conversation with humans involved in regenerating life, shifting consciousness, and reimagining how we can live more beautifully and peacefully. I talk with artists, activists, writers, designers, adventurers, healers, entrepreneurs, creative mavericks, and more. Their stories invite us to participate in the co-creation of a more beautiful, life-sustaining world in service to life, becoming crew on Spaceship Earth. Welcome to the podcast. This is Dan. Good to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. Means a lot, as ever. In this episode, I'm in a conversation with Tom Kay, who is founder of Finisterre, a brand born in 2003, started around the needs of British cold water surfers. Finisterre has gone on to become quite an extraordinary BCorps, which designs functional, sustainable products for anyone that shares a love of the sea. I've been a big fan of Finisterre since Tom started it, really. I've always followed along. I've had a pleasure of collaborating and working with them on a number of things over the years. Was really honoured to get involved and host the event called C7, which was the world's first ocean activist online training camp, which ran on just before the G7 World Leaders gathering in Cornwall in June. C7 ran 2 days before. Had the pleasure of hosting that, which was hours of talks and workshops with and panels with extraordinary humans all over the planet who are working around the multiple issues the ocean faces right now, and also the number of extraordinary ways, innovation, solutions to a lot of the crisis we're facing on land with climate breakdown. So, so we had it was an extraordinary day. It was about 6.5 hours of live broadcasting in the end, but I managed to catch up a couple of hours before we kicked off C7 with Finisterre founder Tom Kay in their workshops in the cliff top on St Agnes. It was a chance to talk to Tom about the thinking behind C7, where it came from, a bit about this moment in time for Finisterre, and also what the last year has been like for the organisation with the pandemic and everything else that's been going on. So let's cut to it. This is a conversation with Tom Kay, founder of Finisterre. Enjoy. Tom, welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
Thanks very much for having us on, Dan.
It's good to not to be actually on a Zoom in the shed at the bottom of my garden. This is like the first time I've actually been in person with someone on the podcast for about 18 months.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah,
physically, actually.
Yeah,
really.
actually, in your hood, in
our hood,
in your HQ right now. So we've got a big day ahead today. We're sort of in a few hours. C7 goes live.
Yep.
And obviously, by the time this podcast goes out, we'll hopefully thousands of people will have been sort of switched into ocean activists, catalysed by this thing. But I just thought it'd be lovely to know, like, let's talk a little bit about it. Like, what is it? Why has it come now? Why have you decided to birth this into the world? And what are your hopes and expectations and dreams for it all?
Yeah, well, it's as I said, it's a big day for us, a big moment for the brand and our community, really. And the thinking behind it was, this week we've got G7 down in Cornwall. Obviously, it hasn't escaped anybody, but it's a bit nuts down here. There's missile launches on the lighthouses. I saw an aircraft carrier out beyond the rock where I swam around this morning. It's crazy. And as much as the inverted commas superpowers are meeting to discuss who knows what, down the road, I thought that we should do our own thing. And C7 is really about addressing and talking about the 7 most pressing issues facing the oceans today. Talking about how oceans are, intrinsically linked to, solving climate change and also our emotional well-being as individuals. So, that was really the idea, and what it is a series of talks from activists, conservationists, scientists, storytellers, and it's sort of saying anybody can be an ocean activist, no matter where you live, what you're doing. It's an accessible point, and anyone can listen to these talks, go on some workshops that we're going to put on today as well, and then hopefully begin their activist journey. And no action is ever too small to make a difference.
Yeah, amazing, and it definitely feels like this is the time to kind of widen up the invitation to become active on our planet right now. What are you sensing down here in Cornwall with the actual G? So I know it's hard to sort of have a consensus, but what is your view? How are people responding, do you think, to this going on down here?
I mean, it's a bit of a fanfare. I just got sent a thing from Ministry on Instagram with Joe Biden's entourage going down the A30, and there's like about 30 SUVs. So I'm not quite sure why all of this is necessary, to be honest with you. I mean, if they're discussing some key issues and making some actual actions and implementation and actually committing to stuff, I suppose is a good thing. And I suppose for local trade, there's been some positives, also been negatives as well. Hearing from local communities that have been affected in a negative way by all of the disturbance. I guess the proof's going to be what they do or decide, what they do or don't decide they're going to do, and it's going to be that'll be whether it's worth it or not. But I still think that there's a lot of upset and travel and probably carbon footprint that maybe could have done on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, I mean, you founded Finisterre, was it 2003?
Yeah.
And you've always had this much bigger awareness, at least it seems to me, the way I look at how you've developed this business, but you've always been very, very aware of your sort of impacts, your kind of role of what you're trying to do here on this earth. And how does it feel now to be sort of putting something quite large like this out into the world? Is it something you've been thinking about for some time, or looking for the thing?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when I started the brand in 2003, we founded on some really strong values which exist in the business even more so now, because there's 130 people in the business now, all living and breathing that purpose about connecting people to the sea, building product to enable that connection in a sustainable, innovative way. That's what we do. We're BCorps certified. So it's really exciting. We're on a journey. I mean, it's kind of weird. Often we're 19 years old as a business, and it actually just feels like we're just getting going now every day. So it's even after all the highs, the lows, and there've been some super tough times when it nearly didn't happen. And it's hard starting something out of nothing, and then starting something that's actually looking to affect change is also equally difficult, or more difficult, I suppose. So we've definitely had some really tough times, but I've got an amazing crew of people in the business and on a really exciting journey. I often say we're like a 19-year-old human. The first 5 years had no idea what we're doing. The middle bit was sort of a bit disruptive, poked a few bears and that sort of thing. And now we're just really kind of getting into our stages, who we are a business and where we're going. And it's a super exciting journey, and the future isn't exciting. We've got a lot of work to do. We're not saying we're perfect. We haven't got all the answers, and we're, working stuff out all the time. having honest dialogue with our customers and our community about that. But we're excited for the future and what we can achieve and sort of effect change around as a brand.
It's always fascinating to me with I guess anyone who spends time in our ocean and the seas around us tends to at least see a lot of how everything that we're doing on land is connected to the sea.
Yep.
You've always surfers or anyone who spends time in around coastlines has often sees these kind of impacts of how we live on this earth. And so in many ways, you're sort of like, you've always been, you're very aware within the community that's built around the brand of the kind of the big challenges that we're facing right now as a species. And now more people are starting to understand the links with the role the ocean plays, beyond, it's kind of the leisure and the resource that it's spoken to, but this extraordinary life support system that more people are starting to understand.
Yeah.
How are you trying to, what's that been like, actually sort of seeing that, having that awareness of these issues, but also trying to build a business at the same time? It's a lot of tension there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's definitely reconciliation between growth and causing an effect on the planet. That we're a business, we have a negative impact, no question about it. We have always tried to mitigate that, look for alternatives. All our wetsuits are made from a bio-rubber now, for example, not neoprene. So always pushing innovation and better ways of doing things as we can, in the knowledge that it's not perfect, but we're on a journey. If it's to, net zero or whatever it is, we're really kind of committed as a bunch of individuals towards a kind of higher purpose as I suppose, as a business, as a brand, and what we can do. So, I'm really aware of that. I guess with regard to the ocean, there's this sort of scientific element of it, which is, super interesting, and every bit of, intel or research coming out is about, its protection needed around MPAs or the power of kelp or seagrass to, sequester carbon. So that's amazing. For me, I think, the brand, what I've always been really excited about is the power of connecting people to the ocean emotionally. So, if it's, you often take kids surfing at the weekend, and I always tell us one story about this mum was like, as a friend of a friend, she said, is it all right if we take my son in for a surf at the weekend? And I was like, yeah, fine, no worries. I've done it for many, many years. I really enjoyed doing that. And I took him in, I pulled him into a few waves, had my own son on my back. He didn't want to get in the water. He was like 2, whatever. He didn't want to get in the water, but didn't want to not be with me. So I was pulling. I was quite hectic, trying to balance and pull this other kid in. Anyway, pulled him in. He had a few waves in the ending of it. And then about like 3 or 4 weeks later, she phones up. It's August Bank holiday. She's like, Tom, we're in the middle of Devon on holiday. Where's the nearest coast? My son has not stopped talking about surfing and the sea since his session with you. And I hadn't thought anything of it. And so suddenly I was like, wow, that's an amazing privilege to have passed that on. And then I said, right, go here. They end up driving like 2.5 hours through bank holiday traffic, whatever it was, to get him to like 1 or 2 foot, get him in the sea. And then, and since then, they lived in London. He joined the Sea Cadets on the Thames, I think it was. They've now moved down, and I see him on the water all the time. And so that's just one example of, I suppose, I'm not saying, isn't that amazing that I did that, but that's just a really nice example of how, someone, a motive connection to the sea can potentially change their life. And that is really, if you imagine that happening on a number of levels all around the world, that's loads of people with that knowing what the sea does for them, and what you need to do for it. It's a two-way relationship, and can really sort of spark something. So that's kind of what I get really excited about.
Yeah, and I think that it's bang on, isn't it? It's this sort of breakthrough that tends to happen when we actually sort of form, we experience, we feel a connection with the water, and that changes how we make sense of this stuff, and actually we want to lean into sort of understanding it, and then therefore protecting it, because we understand its form. And I guess that's the massive challenge right now on this planet, though, because we have this, how can we find ways to help more people have that connection and open up that? And so I know that's something you're looking at now, right? Is this sort of access piece, and like what's the role of
so I'm like mega lucky, privileged that like we're here in Snagswell, Kitty, weapons their space where I live, my family, been here a long time now, and my access to the ocean is pretty unencumbered. I can just get in whatever, car, bike, walk, whatever it is, get in the sea whenever I want. And even just walking down the beach, physically able to do that. And I'll often go out when it's even not that good, just to get in, just to get in the sea. So that's a really, that's a privilege that I really, I'm grateful for and try not to take for granted. And so I'm equally aware that there's kind of a bit of irony in that actually the ocean space is, it should be incredibly inclusive, but actually it's not. You could have a physical barrier to get in the sea. It could be polluted. It could be a physical barrier in terms of your ability to get in the sea. You might not culturally want to get in the sea because, there's more white males in the sea and so it might feel intimidating. So if there's something that we can do to replicate my relationship with the sea and remove the barriers for other people to get in the sea that may be there, that's something that I've always sort of believed in. And we just set the Finisterre Foundation up, literally like last 2 weeks. And its kind of vision is equal access to the ocean for all. And that's kind of what we are really leaning into personally and the business. And it's super exciting, supporting the Wave project here in Cornwall, which is doing exactly that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of, and then our belief is that, if you that's a good thing to do for well-being. And if you have that emotive connection to sea, you can go on and lead hopefully a better life with the awareness of not only the emotional, well-being and physiological, psychological, spiritual, physical, whatever it is good that does you, also the importance of it in potentially solving the climate crisis we're in now. But we need to get on and make those stand up for those that belief right away.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's it's interesting when you've spoken to the sort of health piece and the well-being elements that I guess there's a lot of I guess it's something we've probably known for thousands of years, like how good water is for us, but with sort of modern societies we've seemed to have forgotten that or whatever. So this feels like it's part of this. And it's interesting. I just wanted to talk about COVID actually for a minute and the pandemic, because there's something interesting seemingly going on with these sort of planetary health issues that we're in, and then the kind of health of our modern sort of civilization as well. And COVID has sort of come and it's not just that. Obviously, it's mental health, it's chronic stress-related illnesses. There's a lot of parallels we're seeing between the state of the planet, the health of the planet, and the health of people. But just what's it been like? I guess there's a lot in this question, but I guess this there's the piece like when this pandemic came. I think everyone had a lot of time to maybe question and reflect and think about things in this last year, which maybe when we were business as usual, we didn't have to do. So I was just curious as to how. What has Finisterre, like, what have you learned through this process, and is it shifting anything for you about how you see now the business going forward? Or
I think so like when from our own sort of point of view, Finisterre, when it started out, like it kind of caught everyone totally unawares, and there was a pretty scary sort of probably 2 months when nobody knew what was going to happen. And after 19 years of building the business, I thought it's going to be over. We shut our shops. That's like nearly 2/3 of our income revenue just gone overnight. And my first sort of kind of priority was to look after our people in here and our wider community. So everyone played a part. We had furlough, reduced hours, reduced wages, that sort of thing. And then it was really about what role is this business, this brand going to play at this point in time? I think that's a really interesting question for communities or customers, whatever, to ask the business, what role are you playing in the world right now? And so it's like, right, we need to sort of really double down on what makes Finisterre, and it's about storytelling, it's about inspiration, it's about great product, it's about accessibility, honesty, community, that sort of thing. So we did quite a lot of content around that, and we had really I think the honesty and the openness of our dialogue with our customers really sort of dialed up. So I think, to answer your question, any trends that were sort of happening in my experience sort of got accelerated in COVID, and our customers reacted really well, had great feedback. We did an amazing NHST thing. So, what is the role of the brand? It was Easter Thursday, whatever, and we did like an NHS fundraiser where I did a talk to on our social channels about the arrival of swallows and the resilience of nature. Where do you go to at a time like this when it's shit and it's like nothing I've experienced before. And I was always talked about resilience of nature and how the swallows, they come every summer, and we always had this in my family. My mum and sister used to race to see who's the first swallow, and it was like that was summer, and it's a really symbolic thing because there's a little bird that's like 4 inches long, travels. I think it's like 200 miles a day for 40 days from South Africa to come and spend its time over here, and then they're just gone at the end of summer, and then suddenly they're back again, and it's like the fact that bird has made that journey back there and back in that period of time is something really sort of positive about it and resilient. So we talked about resilience in nature, and they obviously NHS rainbows. We did a thing where we did like a competition, and it was design a competition, and the design brief was swallows and rainbows on a t-shirt, and all of the proceeds go to the NHS COVID fund, and we had over 700 designs sent in. It was insane. So like in terms of what is the role of the brand at these points in time, and really sort of, stepping into them and being brave about doing that. And we have done that. And I think, so that's a really positive that we've kind of got out of the sort of last year and a half, which is, and I'm also very, very aware that isn't the case for many businesses and many people. So we're just sort of talking really about in our own kind of experience. Yeah.
And I guess you must have learned about, because I guess, there was a time, wasn't it, where, unless you guys are right here on the coast, but a lot of like us, say, inland surfers or inland sea lovers were locked down, couldn't move. And it felt like, again, obviously there was this bigger sort of, it felt like, again, those of us that had the privilege of being able to stay at home, but were starting to kind of maybe notice this more intimacy with our sort of natural world around us. And even like, just to go back to water and, how this, how the ocean sort of reaches us wherever we are. But it felt like people were really starting to sort of, maybe wake up to the rivers and the streams and the waters around them. And did you see that lot, or did you find that within the community? Yeah,
I mean, definitely we did. So like we're lucky here, we had, where we are, I suppose if you just, the whole sort of thing about resilience to nature is that, and water, it can be found way closer than you think. So the swallows, for instance, that's not just in Cornwall, that's every pretty much village or town or city in the country would see swallows coming in. And that's what got us a motive. People were suddenly like, it's just coming to me. So it was about this balance, I think, of, inspiring people to kind of go out as they were allowed to in their area to find water, to, look out for nature. And, spring's like a really positive time of the year because it's all, everything's new and fresh and the rest of it. So it was really trying to, encourage people and our community and lean into that and sort of, sort of hopefully show them content that would, we call it like backyard base camp, when you're sort of planning a next trip or whatever it is, you'd kind of be, in your backyard, but it's all kind of going on around you. So yeah, hopefully that was kind of what we achieved. And people were going, wild swimming more and more, and, realizing that you don't have to travel 4 hours to get to Cornwall to go and get in a body of water. There's many places around you that probably more closer than you realized before the pandemic.
We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. How bonkers is that? You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
Amazing. And so there's something that I sort of see with Finisterre that and the way that I would describe it. It always feels like you're speaking a little bit more to being in service of something a bit bigger. Like even like the way if I look at your like ambassadors, for example, like all of them, they might be like amazing surfers, but they're all working towards something a bit bigger. You have, Eski and health. You have like Fergal and food and soils. There's like Matt, and it's like Sam looking at kind of how do African surf culture develop without the sort of everything being dumped on them. Hanley and her sort of community, and it just. And then, I look at you with, with what you do down here and the work you volunteer with the RNLI, and there's always something. Has that been intention? I mean, how's that come about?
I guess it's a great question. It's sort of on a number of levels. So I think, for me, there's a purpose about connecting people to sea, and I was on the train, that we look out the window, looking at something, but engaging subconscious, but sort of thinking about nothing and something at the same time. And then I was thinking about purpose and, what is it and what does it mean? And I think it's got to be bigger than yourself. And it's probably going to be around when you're not around. So it's this much bigger sort of thing, and probably bigger than you as a group of individuals. And I think it's something you've got to be able to live every day on any scale. So, for instance, I was about connecting people to the sea, and I could be like, so we got C7 in a minute. Hopefully, we're going to go and jump in the sea in about after this interview, maybe, and so live the walk the talk of C7. So that's like something quite small on a daily scale. Or it could be something like C7, which is like a much bigger thing. So it's that's how can you have that? It's a real purpose. That's what I think you should be able to apply it to your life. And so, and with regards to like the people we're really lucky to work with, there's, the sea and the kind of surfing is almost the glue that is there if you scrape, but what they do beyond that, is more interesting. And there's a human narrative there beyond just the act of the surfing or the free diving or whatever it is. So, which is interesting itself, but it's about this bigger picture. And I would say like it should be something that someone that that isn't even into surfing would find interesting. I think that's quite. I love that kind of that idea.
Yeah,
it's bigger. It's bigger than just we all love riding waves.
Yeah,
I wouldn't it's my greatest passion probably, but it's like there's I'll stop riding waves one time, and then what's going to live on beyond that.
Yeah. Well, it's just, and I think just the way you talk about it, because there is, there's a lot of hype around purpose, and particularly with business as well. But there's just something always I thought very, very interesting about the community that you build. That there is, like you say, the surfing is maybe the thing that sort of binds, but it feels like people are serving something like a bit bigger and with an eye on the future as well.
I hope so. I think I've always think if the brand can be a platform for people to go and off and do this stuff, or we do C7 and maybe there's loads of ocean activists start, by the end of this evening or whatever, that is, that for me, that I love that. So it's sort of facilitated this connection within the community, and that's kind of, gone far and wide, and maybe they start fires over there that go, they keep spreading sort of thing. So that's kind of, I think that's pretty ultimately why, why I love what I do actually. Yeah.
Amazing. So just bring it back to I'm curious again, someone that has spent a lot of time in the waters. Like, what have you, thinking about where we are today and this, and again, sort of thinking about the pressures that we're facing, what have you noticed personally? What worries you? What keeps you up at night in terms of what is actually going on out there? Yeah,
I think it's interesting because I just sort of, before I start, like my relationship with the sea, I was thinking about it before after we spoke on the phone yesterday. It's like, has definitely become, never got a bit older, but it was definitely more of a one-way relationship maybe hedonistic relationship when I was younger. Like, I go windsurfing in the windiest days, and that's what the sea gave me. I got surfing, and that's what the sea gave me. But now, it's an understanding of it does way more than that on an emotional, physiologial, whatever the spiritual level. It's a well-being thing, and so I think awakening people to that. From all ages is really important. But I think there's the evidence and science is there. You just you need to stop extracting and fish and minerals, whatever it is, from the ocean. And if you give the ocean the space to recover, it actually is more resilient than the land. So things recover really, really quickly. There's examples of that. So you just need a highly protected marine areas around the world, and they need to be enforced and policed, and there's going to have to be people going to be brave at making those calls, because there'll probably be some short-term pain, but hopefully be a long-term, more regenerative relationship with the ocean than we have at the minute.
And think about the G7 and these world leaders. Like, if you could get them in the water, what would you What would you want to? What would you want to open up? Like, what kind of questions might you be interested in? Yeah, that's the first thing. I get them in the water straight away, and just every day. Probably start and end of every day. Get in the water and it'd be a different world, wouldn't it? Yeah. Why would you have the G7 in Cornwall and not do that? I don't understand. Yeah. But anyway, maybe they will, but who knows? But I doubt it. Originally, I did think about paddleboarding around to Carbis Bay with a message in a bottle and give it to them, but then I just saw taken out.
Yeah, saw the aircraft carrier and the missile things on the lighthouse that you could review. I was like, maybe not. Anyway, that'd be the first thing I'd say to them. it would definitely be, I think, it's an old age narrative of politics, but we know what needs to get doing. We know what needs doing, and they just need to get on and implement it ahead of COP26 and police it. Because I think there's quite a lot of marine areas around the UK at the minute, but they're still commercially fished, bottom dredged, everything, and they're not. I think they're called paper parks because they're just marine protected areas on paper, and that's it. So there's got to be some enforcement and some leadership in that area in 2 or 3 years you'll really start to see the benefits.
And what's your sense of where do you see sort of possibility at the moment in shifting these ways that we're the ways that we've sort of thought about the ocean and therefore the problems that we're causing? Where do you see potential? I mean, it could be projects or people, organisations, or what's giving you hope, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about as a brand, like brave, honest, and hopeful. So we're doing this because we believe in, I suppose, the collaborative, power and force of the human spirit, and what we can all do. We really put our minds to it. So it's definitely about getting more evangelists, I suppose, for the ocean around the world, and really forcing that through, and people really kind of making their voice heard. I mean, there's the marine protected areas. We're encouraging at C7 everyone to sign up to the SAS petition, which I think is on about nearly 40,000 signatures. Get up to 80,000. That goes to COP26, and it's really about holding the government account to implementing and policing these marine areas. And because at the minute they're not really worth the paper they're written on.
It feels like there's a bit of a when we think of the the climate issue, which is the screaming mother of all issue of our times, and it feels like again we sort of look at sort of our sort of our sort of consensus in our culture, say the UK or the way the media talks. So it does seem that the sort of ocean is never quite, that people aren't really connecting the sort of importance of the ocean in terms of what it does in terms of keeping life supported on this earth. Yeah. When we talk about climate, it always tends to be quite green oriented, and do you know what I mean? And what's your view on shifting that, or how can we bring maybe more of this together so we sort of have a united sort of blue and green kind of
I think in the last this year there's definitely been all of the every other breath you take comes from the ocean. That that's people know that, seem to know that more than they used to. It's kelp or seagrass, or the sequestering of carbon or blue carbon, in the seas, and the power of that. I mean, it's kind of, I suppose it's is still a bit intangible for quite a lot of people. If you're in a city and then it's blue carbon and you can't see the sea, it's like there's still that connection has got to be driven home. And that's kind of the hope of these kind of events, I suppose. So we've got a lot of work to do, I suppose, and people really realising that connection between. I think it was Sylvia Earles that said, "No water, no life, no green, no blue." Right. Yeah. No blue, no green, rather. And so, having that like connection is super important, and supporting organisations like Surf Skin Sewage, amazing work around that connection. There's a youth manifesto on World Ocean Day a couple of days ago, and that was about the youth voice, and that's a really powerful. I think really more powerful voice than it ever has been for a while, actually, in terms of making that connection around the importance of the ocean.
It's there's a thing that is I think is quite interesting at the moment with all of this, is that, and again, we've sort of probably in the last few decades, in the global north and in more sort of Western cultures, we've been sort of pursuing quite a sort of individualistic culture, which is very much based on now and what's in it for me, and yet what we're seeing with some of these our sort of earth systems that are starting to really crumble, some of them, or they're warning signs, alarm bells everywhere, and that, so we're sort of undoing things, I guess, that have taken millennia to form. And so there's something about are we also, how can culture start to think more long term? Do you know what I mean? So we start to think less about all, what's right in front of us, but how can we actually maybe think about the futures that we might not see, but our children might do or whatever. And that's a you know, it's a difficult shift, but it feels like that is a space that we kind of maybe need to be making a bit more noise around, this sort of having sort of
a longer term view.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, I think the environmental sort of position is obviously an interesting one as well, because you know, so my needs and view is probably different, you know, to someone you know, in the part of the world where the kind of food, you know, shelter, what energy, whatever, you know, is where if that is more of a critical thing in my life, and so maybe their perspective on the environment is different to mine. So you know, there is, I think there's definitely, you talked about Western world earlier, that there is that definite kind of that I think that's probably the biggest challenge actually in terms of sort of getting the environmental message, you know, in so how do you make it as important as what we're talking about for someone who is maybe they are forced to think more short term than I am, and so I think that's also really important, that there isn't this sort of judgmental environmental thing that goes on where you know, you could say, oh, it's easy for you to think and talk like this because, you know, look at, you know, I live in Snagness, all that sort of stuff. So you could, you know, so I'm really aware that there isn't this sort of we have to sort of think about that narrative as well, and how you make that you know, as important and relevant for me as it is for someone who is forced to have more of a short-term view because of how they're living.
Yeah. And
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. I guess
it's a tricky one. Yeah,
it is. And it's sort of like, but yeah, it's almost like, I think it's almost just how do we almost normalize these conversations so that they become things that maybe we're being invited to actually figure out and play with and explore, because it is happening. And
sort of, and I think, you know, I guess it is happening, and I think, you know, there's always, you know, in that respect, there's an economic case for it has been an economic case for environmental action, you know, in terms of if it's, you know, bottle return schemes, whatever it is, or I think that's the exciting way, seeing some really good sort of innovation and technology playing a part to be able to, you know, make it cheaper to get a plastic bottle drain because that's the only one that is available, and then give it back, whatever, you know, that kind of thinking. And so yeah, I don't know loads and loads about it, but, you know, just reading a bit, you know, there's definitely you know, goodwill and wanting to do the right thing is great, and that's amazing, but also there has to be probably like an economic incentive,
carrot and
for
stick
it to really take off. So I don't, you know, so that's kind of where innovation can come in, technology can come in, and that's some amazing. Or, you know, even governments kind of come in for, you know, subsidies or whatever it is to, you know, fish this way, or, you know, plant your farms that way, whatever it is. And I think that's kind of that's obviously a big part of it as well, for it to really kind of, you know, become a global collaborative effort.
It sounds like, actually, you know, again, I was thinking about that sort of world leader thing, but it sounds like actually, you know, again, we it's almost like what really needs to happen now is this diversity of ideas being a whole, you know, being made more accessible, because you know, some of it feels like it is about obviously innovations and technologies, and yet on the other hand, when we talk about things like, you know, blue carbon, it's about just letting nature do its thing, just getting out of the way almost. Do you know what I mean? Because humans just we like to meddle, interfere, and all it's sort of all these things actually need to sort of coexist, don't they?
I mean, they're obviously ones that the sort of, you know, you got the sort of top end or the upstream part of the problem, you know, which is like how you are interacting with the environment on a daily basis, and then there's the sort of downstream thing, which is probably all the damage has been done already. And then how do you
deal with that?
Mitigate that? And as you said, let the ocean or nature, and nature's really resilient, give her space and her time, and you know, the freedom to do that, and it will bounce back, and we'll have a regenerative relationship.
Amazing. So let's think here. So we're launching the C7 today. Let's just think a little bit down the line. What are you hoping, and say in a year's time, you got any sense of where this might go, or what would good look like?
That's a great question. I think about it quite a lot, actually, because, you know, we had the idea, and then it's been quite frenetic getting it going, as you can see next door. And the Cornish Mizzles come in, so the bands
it looks bigger than G7, to be honest.
No, it is, yeah. We got, we're going to have C7 hashtag going, so that'll be great to see how that trends, and if people are doing stuff, they can post it. And then I imagine we'll probably do this again next year, and, we'll revisit and see how everyone's got on. And, it's going to, like anything worthwhile doing, it's always going to be a challenge. So, try and support people. And it's like, I tried this, didn't work. We'll go on, what could you try next and stuff. And so that's really about sort of the role of Finisterre and the brand, is sort of to facilitate that ability to take action and help people along their journey, whatever stage that's at. And so it's been super. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on in the next sort of few weeks, or the next month, or over the summer, whatever it is. And then, years, is hopefully a lot will be achieved. So yeah, it's kind of the start of something, hopefully.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I love this intention you have of trying to open this up, because at least in my experience, again, like, so the idea of activism or being an activist to many can be quite, people tend to sort of conjure up frontliners and attaching yourself to boats and vehicles and of course all that great stuff that's needed. But there's so many forms to to act on something bigger than ourselves is I guess what we're saying, and so I think it's just encouraging people to because we all have these gifts, right? We've all got our thing that we can give to the world, and find our sort of our expression of activism, I guess. So.
No one's too small or think they're too insignificant. It's like you can start. We're all amazing individuals and beautiful humans, and we can go and make a difference.
Amazing, right? Well, look, Tom, we've got to probably get our shit together. But thank you for this. Thank you for all that you do. And I always finish off the podcast thinking about the metaphor of the spaceship Earth, and we're this life-giving rock hurtling through space, and shifting from passengers to becoming crew on the spaceship. And what does that conjure up for you now? This idea of becoming crew right here in 2021.
I think it'd be individuals or groups start doing something right away. So we're talking about action, and it starts like the hardest bit about anything is just getting started. Don't let perfect get in the way of good. Just start somewhere, begin something, and you'll learn. You'll be vulnerable, ask people questions, get in the right with the community, and find out people will help each other.
Amazing.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, man. So there you have it. That was Tom Kay, founder of Finisterre, and that was just before the C7 event, which went swimmingly is a good word. It was like 6.5 hours, I think, at the end of panels and talks and workshops, and all of that is available now online. It's all archived, and you can access all of that. Links in the show notes, and there's just so many incredible conversations and projects that are happening around the world, and activists and innovators and all sorts. So I really do recommend diving into that. And it was a total pleasure and complete honor to be asked down to host the C7 event, and learnt loads, and massive gratitude for the Finisterre crew for looking after me down there. I managed to get in the sea a couple of times as well. Got to surf in the day after, caught some waves. It's been a while. Can still do it, can still surf just about, and also got in on the Saturday as part of the world record breaking paddle out, the G7 demonstration paddle out. There was about 1,000 of us on surfboards and paddle boards and kayaks and all sorts. We paddled out from in Falmouth, organised by the mighty Surfers Against Sewage. Brilliant community of people down there also. And actually there's a conversation with Surfers Against Sewage CEO Hugo Taghome coming as well that I recorded down there. So look out for that one. But yeah, do check it out. Remember, no ocean, no life. The ocean has taken the real heavy lifting of our climate change so far. It's the thing that's absorbed most of the heat that is been trapped due to greenhouse gas emissions, and the ocean is suffering. You know, acidification in the ocean, decline in all kinds of sea life, development, overdevelopment of the coastlines. It's under so much pressure, overfishing, which Tom mentioned a lot. The ocean is the life support. It provides, at least 50% of the air we breathe comes from phytoplankton in the ocean. So if we don't create a healthy ocean, it's kind of game over. So a lot at stake. Do sign up to these initiatives, get stuck in, talk to your MPs. Like, this stuff really matters. This is essential for human flourishing. So get involved. Multiple ways to do that. Thanks for listening. Means a lot. Until next time, peace and out.
Clumps hit together, dust churning, gas swirling, and the earth was born. Molten rock erupting, volcanic and hot as hell, mountains crashing, lava flowing, 100 million years of this, while slowly cooling, until at last, water drops. Liquid water on the surface of the earth, then the first sign of life.